Welcome to the Rogue One, a Star Wars story after party. We're going to talk about this film, why we think it is incredibly moving, and this is going to be an interactive experience. So throw your thoughts and comments in the YouTube comments here. We will talk about your questions, your thoughts. I don't know, make fun of us, whatever you want to do. We will talk about it. So I wanted to start off with kind of an icebreaker before we get into this film, discussing why it's so powerful. And right off the top, I know we're going to show our hands early. We like this film. We think it is a solid entry into the Star Wars franchise. So where do you guys rank this among the Star Wars films? And if you're watching, throw your thoughts in the comments. We'll talk about it. What do you guys think?
It's definitely in the top four.
I'd say top four. It's hard. Empire is I think Doug and I agree. Empire is number one. Star Wars, their New Hope is probably number two. And then it's Rogue One, Jedi, and you can say it's Jedi Rogue One. It's, everyone's got their preference. I probably would put this right after Jedi. It's just ahead of Episode 3.
I think I would too. Episode 3, while I really like it, it's entertaining, but this is probably a more solid film acting wise. So that's why I put it where it is. But I love Episode 3 of the prequels. I love that one. Yeah.
It's hard to, I know we ranked our favorite movies and things like that. And, Drew had Empire and Nathan had Return of the Jedi, but those movies, they are separate movies, but they're a trilogy. You can't do Empire without A New Hope or Return of the Jedi, where Rogue One was a standalone movie. Yeah, it folded right into Episode 4, but it was just a standalone story that wasn't overly important to the rest of the arc. It was just a small little part, but the way they made the movie made it stand out so much more than like Solo or any of the other standalone movies.
Rogue One is the feel of it has original trilogy vibes to it. You know what I mean? It's like the way it was filmed, the pacing of the story, it moved, and it's a lot of the ways that the original trilogy moved. They didn't rely heavily on these long drawn out dialogue scenes like the prequels did. It was one of the most fun times I've had sitting in a movie theater watching that movie, and was completely blown away when I walked out. And obviously it flows right into A New Hope, like it was supposed to, but just the feeling you get was like, man, this is like watching the original trilogy. It was beautiful the way they filmed it.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting, because we pretty much knew what the story was going to be. At least I did. I was 85% sure what was going to happen at the end the first time I saw this in the theater. And the plot is not that complicated. It's the fact that they gave every character these transformational arcs. Each character in the film goes through some kind of character change that's meaningful, even though they only had one film to do it, and they had to do that with a number of characters. I felt like that's what made it so impressive and solid, because it is a very simple plot. It's not going to blow your socks off with the storytelling, but with the characters and how they build them, I think that's its strong suit. What do you think? And the nostalgia factor.
First off, you can do a spinoff with just about any of the main characters. I think they did talk about Cassian. Or wait, did they do Andor?
They have an Andor.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
Really gritty, and it's really well done.
So they can take that. You could do a prequel with Jyn Erso. I would love to see the two guys, Chirrut and Baze. I would love to see what happened before this with them. Them bickering back and forth was kind of cool. Of course, you could do a Saul Guerrero. I think he was in some of the cartoons.
He was in Andor too.
and he was in Andor.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet. I need to watch that.
You do.
So it's like it's very, very rare do you get a really good story that grows characters to the point where you want to see more of them all in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see prequels had to be prequels, obviously, on all of these people because they were just written very well. They casted the perfect cast and they just kind of had fun with it. It wasn't like, here's my complicated backstory and you don't have to go into that. It's just like, it's me and this is what happened. And now let's go do our stuff. And so, yeah, it was fun like that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be interesting if they had made a parallel trilogy with these characters that parallels episodes 1 through 3? I mean, that's kind of a wild idea, but I think that would be really interesting in watching how it interacts with the main story. But I don't know that they'd ever do that with these characters, but I'd be down.
You mean have it take place the same time as the original trilogy? You can't.
Yeah.
They all died.
No, I mean episodes 1 through 3.
The prequels.
They wouldn't have been old. Well, a couple of them would have been probably around for the prequels. Jyn Erso wouldn't have been. Andor wouldn't have been, really. Maybe. I think he was born during the Clone Wars, maybe.
Well, can you tell us, since you're like
years.
you're like the massive Star Wars fan here. I mean, we all love Star Wars, but you're immersed in the universe. So for anybody watching, without spoiling it, who hasn't seen Andor, can you kind of catch us up on what Andor adds to this film without really spoiling anything?
Yeah. So Andor is following, obviously, Cassian Andor, and it starts off about 5 years before Rogue One. So you get to see his beginnings. You get to see, they do a couple flashbacks where he's a child.
Wait, I did see some of this.
Yeah, there's a few flashbacks where he's a child. But you see where it picks up. You see how he starts getting involved with the rebels. And he obviously has no love for the Empire. And you kind of follow. I'm trying not, obviously not to give it away, but you just see his beginnings. You see how he starts getting involved in fighting the Empire. Just say that.
So when we pick up with him at the beginning of this film, he is kind of in his cutthroat stage.
Yeah,
right
he's
at the
a captain
beginning of
by this point.
I mean, we are going to spoil this film, by the way. So we if you haven't watched it, go watch it.
If you haven't watched it, what are you waiting on?
Yeah. So at the beginning of this film, he kills one of his own informants because he became injured. And at the end of the film, I don't feel like his character would have done that. He went from being I got to save my own skin type of character to, by the end of the film, he's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for others. So I assume during Andor, he's still in this, I'm going to do what I need to do to survive phase, right?
I'll answer that part, and then I'm going to let Doug take the next part, because I guarantee Doug and I were going to say the exact same thing about that. So how is he in Andor? Is he still a shoot first type of guy? Absolutely. He's 100% shoot first, get out of the situation that way. He's not a negotiator. He's going to fight his way out at every chance he gets. Now, for the first part you asked, he looks like he is the kind of guy, when he shot that guy just to save his neck. I think Doug and I are going to agree on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and let Doug finish that up.
Oh, well, thank you. He didn't kill him he wasn't saving his neck. They were trapped, and that guy was too big to climb and escape. So it was either kill him or let him get captured. They can torture him and extract secrets. So I think Drew's saying the same thing. He killed that guy at the beginning because if he hadn't, it would have been worse for the rebels. He knew a lot of
tortured that guy.
Yeah. You don't feel like, I see what you mean, and I think a lot of people share your opinion. You don't think that he went kind of from a lone wolf to more of a no man left behind mentality by the end? At least, like, he's obviously going to shoot the other side, but he's more of a we're getting out of here together type of thing.
I think by the end of it, especially with Jin, he kind of had that where he, you know, well, I think he just accepted the fact that they weren't getting off of Scarif, and and doing the best that he can. He was, putting the whole group together, which I think he's always had that. I think even at the beginning of the film, his number one priority was the Rebel Alliance and defeating the Empire at any cost. Whatever I have to do to make sure that we win, I'm going to do it. So I don't know if he was necessarily heartless or selfish. He was willing to make sacrifices where sacrifices needed to be made and make that hard decision. And I think he was even willing to die himself if it furthered the cause.
Yeah.
So I think he was actually very selfless. He wasn't selfish at all. He was, I'll do whatever I have to do. And if that means I die, I die.
Maybe they just lacked the camaraderie then that they had at the end.
Well, again, you're not going to dodge the Death Star. So now granted, I think he appreciated his team. He's been a guy who worked by himself, all the time anyhow. But, this was kind of nice for him. This is how I'm ending my career. I am a part of a group, a team, and we work together and we succeeded, even though we're not going to make this. I think that changed in him. But when it comes to what he's willing to do, unfortunately, when it comes to war, that's, those are the people that everyone's like, you're bad, but you almost need that person. You see these characters portrayed as good and bad. If you ever seen Serenity, the Firefly movie, the bad guy in that one, he was actually, the way he explained it made sense. He's just like, he's sitting there talking to him. He's like, I'm not going to heaven. I know what I've done, but what I've done is for the better good of these people. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I'm not going to get into that. But when it comes to war, unfortunately, you need those people who are going to make those horrible. I mean, God, World War II, somebody had to say, all right, we're coming up on Omaha Beach. You're going to land those ships. You're going to open and you're going to start running, knowing that thousands of those kids aren't going to make it onto that beach. I mean, they're dead before they even get off the boat, but they have to do that. So, you got to have those people who can make those horrible decisions, who are willing to let people die. Again, in World War II, they broke the Enigma code and yet still let ships get sunk by U-boats, because if they would have saved those ships, the Germans would have realized that, I think it was the UK who broke it, that they broke their code, and then they'd change it, and then all that work would have been for nothing. So they just let ships get destroyed and thousands of soldiers die, knowing that, in an hour, that ship is going to be sunk. We can easily send planes, but if we do, then this won't happen. So we have to let them die. So unfortunately in war, it comes to that. And
gray scenarios.
And that's, obviously I just brought up some big scenarios, but in this little scenario, if he would have let that guy live, a lot of secrets would have gotten out.
Well, yes, but we all have talked about with Star Wars. I mean, World War I and World War II were models for this franchise. A lot of the Empire is modeled off of Germany and I imagine some other countries, but I mean, you can see it in the costumes. So I'm sure that some of these scenarios, they're trying to portray the complexities of war and what it does to a person. Like it, having to do that kind of thing hardens you. And these characters are hardened at the beginning. Now they'll lighten up. I mean, you can see they get a little bit, I guess what I would say, healthier throughout the film. But I mean, war takes a toll, and you get to see it in this film.
Well, Andor has been And when you see, if you watch the show, you'll find out that, I mean, when he says, I've been in this war since I was 6 years old, he means it.
Yeah.
Like, he has, his entire life has been nothing but war and violence. And so now that's his mentality now is, I've lived through everything, and he has no fear anymore. You know, that's just, he's had that kind of life.
Well, this was a perfect carryover from episode 3 because I felt like in Revenge of the Sith, moral ambiguity was one of the themes there. And they carry that into this film. So it really fits perfectly in between episode 3 and 4, would you say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it ended right at the beginning of episode 4, so it fits in perfectly.
I thought it was interesting. There's a quote at the beginning of the movie or towards the beginning, and it's said to Andor. There's one sort of prison captain. I sense you carry yours everywhere you go. And
that's a great line.
Yeah, great line, but it describes his starting point. And I guess he learns to connect. I mean, what moment do you think what moment is the catalyst for him changing in this film?
I think it's when he was sent to kill Jin's father,
Yeah,
Galen Erso. Yeah, and he went out with the sniper rifle, and he had it lined up. And there was a moment where, you know, he has his finger on the trigger and he's ready to take the shot, but then Krennic shows up, and he watches Krennic shoot all these scientists and leave Galen Erso alive because of Erso's betrayal. And I think that's where he starts to realize that, like, maybe Galen isn't as horrible as we're making this out to. Maybe Jin is right. Maybe there is, you know, he is useful if we take him alive. Because when he gets back to the ship, and they're like, you were going to shoot him. And he said, like, I had every opportunity to pull the trigger, but did I do it? No. You know? And I think that's where you start to see a little bit of the change in him to, maybe sometimes I don't need to follow every single order. Maybe there are other ways to get something done necessarily. But I mean, Galen died anyway, so, you know, he didn't have to answer for that. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, but his death, it did show you that, I mean, this is a serious film, you know. It's not going to be one where everybody lives like a lot of
nobody did.
films. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't expecting anybody to live, because then you have to explain what happens to them and why you don't see them in the other movies and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, there was a part of me towards the end of the film where I'm like, but they've made such good characters. They've got to save one or two. And so I knew they were probably going to die, but I was hoping. And so I'm glad we got Andor. That's cool. But I was hoping they'd live so they could kind of go and make another standalone film with somebody from this film. But that moment when Andor doesn't shoot Galen, I mean, I thought, I guess this comes a little bit from my slightly different perspective, but I thought maybe that was the moment where he saw Krennic shooting those scientists, and he thought, oh, the rebellion is functioning just like the Empire at this point. And if we go down this road, well, we're going to be villains. Like, we're just like them. So I saw like a turn there for everybody, but I wonder if you guys agree or disagree, because you're not the only ones who haven't shared that perspective. So I think it's interesting to hear the other side.
It is interesting, because I never really thought about that, but I mean, that is a possibility that he sees that and he realizes that, man, I was just about to execute a guy. They just showed up and executed a bunch of innocent people. I guess innocent. I mean, I guess those guys are innocent because they didn't do anything. That was 100% Galen.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, maybe that was a little opening that. Well, I mean, didn't Jin say something earlier about you follow orders? Because I follow orders. And she goes, even when you know they're wrong, you might as well just be a stormtrooper.
Oh man, I did not catch that line.
Yeah, okay. She says that. So even when you know they're wrong, you might as well just be a stormtrooper. And that's what he's like, hey, don't you don't get to pick and choose your sides and all that stuff, you know.
Right.
But maybe that was like one of those, like, oh, okay, yeah,
See, that is an interesting line too. You don't get to pick and choose your sides too, because if you grew up in the Empire, I mean, talk about complexities of war. It's cool that they gave us some good characters or Galen, you know, on the other side, because if you grew up in war on the wrong side, like,
yeah,
how
Or it's-
responsible are you if you don't really know what's going on? That's
yeah.
tricky.
And I may have misquoted that. I think it's you don't get to pick and choose like what I can't remember exactly like what matters. Like I've been in this since I was 6 years old. You know, you just show up and now all of a sudden this is real for you. Like, you know, we don't get to choose when we want to be invested in this and when we don't want to be invested in this. This is our life. So he's in that, but then that's when she throws out the like, well, you're so into it that you just follow orders blindly. Like, well, that's a great point.
Well, and two, he has been in it so long that it's hard to. I mean, you ever had like ideas get in your head and you're so into your perspective that like you can't see straight? I mean, because if you've never been outside of that situation, and he's a fugitive at this point, probably, so he probably can't even go have a normal life if he wanted to, unless he escaped like way far away. But he'd probably get hunted down, I would think. What do you think?
Well, it's just like you said, when you can't choose your sides, you know, he's been a part of this side for so long, he just doesn't know anything else. And as bad as the Nazis were in World War II, you know, a lot of those kids that were fighting in that war for the Germans, that's just how they grew up.
Yeah, they're just
that's
kids.
what they were taught. And, you know, when you're taught that you like this and you don't like this, and that's what your country believes, and that's right, well, that's right. So I'm going to do right. And then, you know, it takes, you know, going through something bad or seeing something bad where it's just like, and then you start weighing it left and right. So yeah, with him following rules, I mean, that's what he's done since, like he said, he was 6 years old. I'm told to do this. I go do this. If this happens during this, everyone dies and escape. And, you know, again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but sometimes in war that's necessary. So it's just, I think and truthfully, even after that, I don't know. I mean, you know, that might have been just a small situation where he was about to pull that. And then when Krennic walked in, he's like, well, I'll wait for a second. And, you know, I don't know for sure. I mean, I'd like to believe he turned a page, but at the same point, if he would have lived through this mission, they made us send him out to do something else bad. You never know. So, but I think Drew hit it on the head when he said that. I think at one point during this fight, he's just like, well, I'm definitely not getting out of this. So I'm just going to try to, you know, do as much as possible and be a teammate and kind of go from there.
Yeah. At what point was he like, well, I'm going to die either way, so I might as well go down swinging for somebody else, you know, or for my teammates? And that's interesting. I wonder if he always thought he was going to die before he saw the mission completed or the rebellion victorious overall.
Well, I'm sure that he had that in his mind that there's a real strong chance that I'm not going to see the end of this war.
If you're in it as deep as he was, then
Yeah, I mean,
I think at one point during the final battle, when you're up on the top of a skyscraper with thousands of Imperials below you, and now people know you're up there and you're listening to your teammates die left and right. I think right about the time K2SO died, I think he's just like, all right, well, as long as we get this sent upstairs, then all's good. So that's all I'm focused on. But again, that's probably what his focus was from the beginning too, because he was a soldier, lifelong soldier.
And real quick, we have to come back to this. Talking about beaming plans, I do want to get into that a little bit because they had to reshoot the ending of this movie the scene, the what we got was not the original way it was filmed. It was filmed a little differently, and I kind of wish they would have kept it, because to me it would have made more sense with the end. But then we wouldn't have gotten a really awesome scene.
Tell us
That's
what
gotta
it
be
was
the Vader
originally going to be.
So originally they filmed, and the funny thing is, real quick, when they filmed an original ending, and then for Star Wars Battlefront that came out in 2015, right before Rogue One came out, they added a DLC, and it was Scarif. So you could, and one of the things on Scarif was you have to pilot the U-wing in through the shield, land on Scarif. You got to run through the map, and you get data discs, and then you have to run back to the ship and take off. Well, they kind of spoiled the original ending when they did that, because and if you watch the trailers, you can see Jyn running across the beach holding a case.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. So the original thing was they had the case, and then she ran across the beach to get it to a ship. And then I guess they were going to take off and like fly it back up to the Alliance. And then they thought, well, no, let's not do that. What, because, and I think they changed it maybe because in A New Hope, Vader says, plans were beamed to this ship by rebel spies. So, okay, so we have to beam the stuff up.
That's very Star Trek of them.
Right. But I wish they had beamed it a little differently than the way they did it, though. I don't
go
know.
on.
Okay. So they beamed it up to the ship, right? He's like, oh, I got the disc. All right, let's get this going. And then they get trapped in the airlock. And then Vader shows up, which was amazing, by the way,
Great
to watch
scene,
Vader completely destroy everybody, right? And then they hand it off, and Vader gets to the ship just in time to see the Tantive 4 flying away, right? And then, of course, 30 seconds later, he catches up to the Tantive 4, and he grabs Leia and says, hey, where are those plans you stole, right? And Leia is sitting there going, I don't know what you're talking about. We're on a diplomatic mission from Alderaan. And Vader's got to be thinking, like, you got to be kidding me. I just watched you fly away. I just slaughtered half your crew, and now you're going to stand here and lie to me. So I wish what they would have done is maybe got it up to one ship, and then that ship, instead of having a disc, beamed it to Leia's ship, who is outside the battle, and then take off. Because then it would have given Vader, when he finally tracked her down, for Leia to say, like, hey, I'm going to try to lie to him. It would have been believable that she would have tried to have lied to him.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh yeah, Vader just killed a bunch of people in the airlock, so he knows it was us. I can't lie to him, but I'm going to do it anyway.
The only way I can make sense of it is she's gaslighting him, because people do that in real life, and then the victim starts going,
right,
wait, did I really see that? So she's gaslighting Vader, which is kind of ridiculous still.
Keep in mind,
I wish they would have beamed it to that ship instead of it being in the ship.
Yeah, but they did hyperspace away. So, it wasn't like he walked back and hit a button. They were right behind him, They probably had to track him down, and there are more than one of their type of ship, so they could just...
That's true.
You could think that, but at the same point, it's funnier to go with your theory.
I literally saw you 5 minutes
ago.
Right. We don't know that he directly saw Leia, right?
I was reading your license plate as you
pulled fly away. He saw the ship. He got its license plate number. He was right there.
They have license
10
plates?
10 more seconds, he would have been on that ship. So I wish like they would have just beamed it up. Vader comes in, he's slaughtering everybody, and right before he kills the last person, that person hits a button and shoots the plans to Leia's ship, who's like floating out in space outside the battle. And then they get it, and they're like, hey, we got him, let's go. And then they take off. And then it would have been like, Vader would have been like, where did they go? We got to track that down real quick.
But not floating out in space, Leia, like in The Last Jedi, right?
Not episode 8 floating in space.
Like floating out in a ship.
She's in a ship that's just hanging out. That's what I would have done. I would have changed that around a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Why couldn't she have beamed the plans straight to the planet from her ship? I mean, episode 1, they were talking to Padme from Coruscant on holograms.
I don't know how the space internet worked back then.
And they were probably
Or the
outside the
hollow net,
Wi-Fi.
the
The
hollow
Wi-Fi
net, as
signal.
they call it in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how that works with sending files.
I don't want you to get into deep dives on that. I would just hit my mind.
We'll have to find an
Hilarious.
IT.
Yeah, we'll go
Star
back.
Wars IT tech who can explain that. Anyway, that was
we
that
jumped
was,
from the beginning to the end. We should probably.
I just wanted to throw that out there because we were on it. But yeah, let's get back into some of the other stuff that happened.
Well, what about you? Are you guys okay fast forwarding to the beach when they
We
land?
just fast forwarded all the way to the end. We can, I'm
let's
good
go
with
wherever.
everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
just
just
keep up
go
with this.
wherever.
You've
I
all
gotta
seen
say,
this
man.
a number of times. You know where we're at.
We go all over
It
the place.
was my dream to see those. What I always mix up ATSTs, right? ATSTs storming the beach. That was
ATSTs are two, like,
oh dang it! I mixed them up again.
all terrain. Yeah, ATST, all terrain scout transports. You're looking at the ATAT, all terrain armored transports.
I love those on Planet Hoth. I loved those on the beach, and the aesthetic on this film being everything's dirty. I loved that. I just thought that was spectacular.
They weren't as well built as they were in Empire. They kind of like
Really?
just had. Well, I mean, in Empire, remember they had blasters shooting at them and they couldn't take them down.
Yeah, different types of shield.
But they were a little different. Like they had a plate on the side that was more. Yeah, they weren't quite as strong as the Hoth walkers, but.
Do you think they did that on
Yeah.
purpose because this is earlier in history? So because they lost this battle, they upgraded them for Hoth.
And I could, yeah, I think that's what I like to think. I like to think they had these because I don't think they were. And I've read this somewhere in a book, and I can't remember exactly, but I don't think these were built for combat necessarily. I think they were more for transport of goods and cargo and stuff like that. That's why they have that big door on the side.
Oh,
right. And then after that, the Empire's like, oh man, we can't do that anymore.
Well, even in Empire Strikes Back, Luke says or somebody says the armor's too strong for blasters.
So the X-wings were just blowing them up,
lasers or something. Yeah. So they've definitely upgraded their armor from Rogue One to Empire.
Yeah, they learned.
Yeah, but it's cool they would put that detail in this film,
Mm-hmm.
to make it belong with the others.
Yeah, I will say they did a really good job on making sure they got the details. I mean, there's a bunch of Easter eggs and stuff like that. But one thing I read that throughout the whole movie, throughout the last battle, I was waiting for, one of the unsung heroes of the trilogy is Wedge Antilles. And, he is a very small part in all three movies. And he shows up in episode 9.
We love him.
Second too. Yeah, because he's awesome. He was not put into this movie like a lot of the other people from the episode 4.
Oh yeah,
Death Star
Leader, Gold Leader.
All those guys were in Rogue One, but Wedge wasn't, because in episode 4, the first thing he says as they pull up, he's like, "My God, look at the size of that thing." He wouldn't have said that if he had already seen it, which everyone else there had. Because if he was at the Rogue One fight, he would have seen the Death Star and he wouldn't have been surprised by the size of it in episode 4. So they could not put him in Rogue One.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, I love how like Luke gets the Red 5 designation because the Red 5 in this battle got way off course. Where are you going, Red 5? And he's like, blows
was
up.
Was that a cameo? Was that somebody special?
That wasn't anybody that I knew.
Okay.
And I don't think it was, but
I mean, because the person was kind of not Star Wars-y.
No, it wasn't.
It felt like he had won a contest and it's like, okay, just sit here and yell.
Yeah. But it was awesome to see like Gold Leader and Red Leader, because that was just alternate and extra footage from A New Hope that wasn't used.
Wow.
The creators of Rogue One got to go through all the Lucasfilm archives and get like hundreds of hours of footage to rumble through and go, oh, we'll take that and we'll take that and we'll take that. So they were able to take alternate takes of Red Leader and Gold Leader and basically kind of touch up the background more and put them into Rogue One seamlessly, like they were actually there. And for like a younger kid who's watching this movie, let's say, they might not even picked up that when Gold Leader pops up and goes, "This is Gold Leader," that's the guy from A New Hope.
Yeah.
That's why it felt like it, fit so seamlessly. Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy from Gold Leader is so distinguished because he couldn't remember his lines. He had to read all of his lines in the cockpit. So that's why his speech pattern is the way it is, where he's always like, I don't know. Everything was preparing to attack.
It was very Kurt.
Yeah, he was very, because he had to read all of his lines. He couldn't memorize anything. So, but they found those alternate takes and put those in the movie, and it was so cool.
And what interesting part is in Rogue One there were female pilots. If I remember this right, those were cut scenes from Episode 4. They actually had female pilots in Episode 4, but
they had some or Jedi. I know they did for Jedi.
Was it Jedi? Okay,
yeah.
So the female pilots in Rogue One, I believe, were scenes that were cut out of the original trilogy, and they put them in there too. Because in the original trilogy, you never had female pilots or fighters.
You did in Jedi. I think there was one. I think there was one in Jedi. I think she was
remember it.
A-wing pilot. I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember.
I mean, in the lore stuff, but they weren't.
Yeah.
I don't remember her voice in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I can't.
I think
my mind's drawing a blank. And you might be right.
I mean, you would know better than I would, but
I can't remember. Now I gotta go back and watch it again. I've seen it 1,000 times, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw one, but maybe I'm mistaken. But yeah, it was just, and even the blue group, the blue leader, the way he was dressed with his mustache was like very 1977 mustache.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like even the characters like had to play the role of, hey, you got to have your sideburns down to about right here, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that was
a way, cool. And we were talking about the beach, and we went all the way to there, but that's
yeah. Sorry, you just said
what we do here.
How technical they are, yeah.
But
anyway, the beach,
very good. Yeah, what do you want to know about the beach?
Oh, he was talking about the AT-ATs.
Yeah, the AT-ATs were awesome, though.
Yeah, and the whole use of the Force and perspective on the Force in this film comes into play on this battle too, because it was interesting to look at the Force. The Star Wars franchise has always been kind of spiritual with the Force. It's probably, I mean, we know it's based on Eastern ancient religions and samurai stuff. So it's interesting how they approached it in this film, because you've got Chirrut. I'm not sure how to say his name, Chirrut, but you've got his character, and he's obviously very spiritual. And he believes in the Force. He's using he's a guardian of the wills. And you've got other characters who are more like the guy on the street who don't necessarily buy in to the Force, which you saw a little bit of that in the original trilogy, but from the villain side, because there's people who called Vader like a crazy wizard, old religion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But here you've got characters that on the hero's side that were skeptical of the Force. And I feel like the Force plays a role not only in the team coming together, but in what happens in this battle. What do you think about how the Force is portrayed in this film and what it means?
First off, sorry, I heard some.
That's kind of a tough question
feedback or something. No, I heard some feedback.
No, that was me.
Yeah, I looped over twice.
Oh.
My phone went off.
Oh,
gotcha.
Sorry.
Anyway, well, it depends how you look at the Force. If you look at the Force like we look at God, or as any other religion looks at their deity, then yeah, you can look at Chirrut walking around, I'm one with the Force is one with me, as a prayer to the Force, saying, guide me, make me, protect me as I walk through this battlefield of lasers. Let me at least get here.
They literally call it praying in the film at one point too.
Yeah. So yeah, if the Force, I think, has really evolved over the past 40, 50, almost 50 years now since the original one came out. It started off with, I can make things float, or I can choke somebody. And then it turned into, I can shoot lightning from my thing, and I can summon, or I can kind of shoot stuff out to my sister, who I haven't figured out to my sister yet. And then it turned into something bigger in the prequels, and then it turned into FaceTime and the sequels. And so we're not sure exactly what they're trying to make the Force yet, but if you can look at the Force as like a god, as a living being, then yeah, totally. There's so much spirituality throughout the entire, world, universe of Star Wars, because they use that Force as a guide, and they use the Force, asking for protection, just like we do whenever we pray here.
And the Force has a will in the Star Wars franchise. It gets a little off the rails in the prequel trilogy because they went with that idea of like divine seed, which is probably, Darth Vader had a virgin birth and all that. That's very surprising. But what they did in this film felt a little bit more true to Episode 4's version of the Force or something like that. But yeah, it guides them, it protects them, but it has a will, and it wanted, you could say, the rebellion to win this fight. I don't know. What do you think?
It's very possible, yeah. If you believe that the Force or God is there for good, believe in, pray to, you gotta believe that God will put us in the best situation, and the Force will help them through the worst of situations.
And I kind of like, I mentioned I hate that they all died because I love these characters, but I felt it was realistic in terms of, like, if I'm looking at this film with some kind of analogy for religion, me coming from a Christian perspective, I believe God's not necessarily going to protect us from harm. So he protects them to their goal, and then it still costs them their lives, but it was a meaningful death. I feel like that was realistic in terms of what I believe. They're living for a bigger purpose. They're probably going to live on after their death here in a spiritual sense. But we're not promised that we're not going to get sick or be harmed. I thought it was really cool, and is tragic, but it was meaningful if you're thinking about legacy and what does my life mean? What do I want it to mean? And that was a huge theme in this film.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't necessarily know like you can say the Force is good. I mean, it's, you got the good, you got the bad. It's just all about how you use it. If you're using the Force for good, you're thinking outward. You're thinking for everybody. So, I mean, in a way, I guess if you're using the Force that way, you say, yeah, the Force is good. I mean, it helps everybody. I use it this way. If you're using it for the way the Sith use it, it's more selfish reasons, personal gain. Everything's about me. Well, then you're making the Force evil. And so I don't think the Force has a one way or the other. I think it's just there. It's just how do you use it, and that's.
Well, I mean, that's
come out. I don't think it has a will that, like, I want everyone to be good. I don't think it works.
That's the part that's very ambiguous about the series, and I see what you mean, because we've never quite figured out what does it mean when they talk so much about bringing balance to the Force.
Well, balance, you got to have a good balance of good and bad. One side can't be too powerful. Dark gets too powerful, someone's got to come bring it back. The light gets too powerful, someone's got to come back and balance it out. So it's got to be like this. It doesn't favor one side or the other. It's just how is it used?
Oh, what if the Force has a will, and I guess it depends on if you think it's an entity. And of course, we're kind of fan fictioning here, but
right.
What if it's really for everyone? it's for all people. But when
Which-
one side gets too big, we see all this war in these films.
Mhm.
You could argue that the downfall of the Jedi in Episode 3 was they were getting a little bit too powerful in an unhealthy way, and what some of the things they were doing with their
Getting
power.
arrogant.
Yeah. So, like, for the good of everyone, balance had to come. I'm kind of trying to figure this out because we've never been able to solve what
It's
does it mean.
right. I mean, and that's a good point. I think, if you're a Jedi, you're looking at the Force as being it's good. It's the energy that binds us together, and it's this and all that stuff, and it's a fabulous thing, and it's wonderful. But if you're on the Sith, you're looking at the Force as like, oh yeah, the Force is amazing, dude. I can like manipulate people, and I can get what I want, and I can do. There's a meme on the internet that says if I had Force powers, there's 100% chance I'd use them wrong, and I might actually be in that category. Like I could
Right.
really use that to my advantage.
I thought most of us would.
Right. So it's again, so if you're on the Jedi, yeah, you think the Force is a good thing. And if you're on the dark side, you look at it for your purposes. And
Oh, it's pretty similar to free will then.
yeah, it's more like free
We're
will.
given
You have
free
it.
will. What
How
do
you gonna
you do
use
with it? Good,
Right.
bad.
Right,
Bad
but-
is easier. It's quicker. It can be quicker.
Mhm.
So
Sometimes more fun, maybe. I don't know. Like it's easier to use. It's more seductive, is what Yoda says. But you're right about that. Maybe the Jedi were getting too big and too powerful, and they needed Anakin to come along and bring some balance by becoming Vader. And then later on, the Empire took over, and you got the Emperor who's getting too powerful. So what happens? Anakin takes care of the Emperor, So it's like,
Mhm.
and then if Luke gets too big, Kylo Ren comes along and tears it down,
Pulls them back
But
to center.
yeah, everything's got to come out
Neutrality.
that way.
Mhm.
So,
which is kind of sad because that means they're at war always.
constantly. Right.
Unless
Unless
everybody
there are no
is
Jedi.
like, we're not gonna get powerful. We're all gonna, I don't know, just be in this
Well-
together, and it's a very different way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to get into the sequel trilogy too much, but there was one aspect about it, like what Luke said when talking about balance. And even he said, at the height of their power, they allowed Darth Sidious to show up, and so that's why it's time for the Jedi to die. Maybe the best thing to do is not have any Jedi. If we don't have Jedi, we might not have any Sith. There's no chance of somebody going over to the dark side. We don't have to do this. Let's not train people to become that anymore. And I think there's a few characters in Rogue One who feel the same way. I think Baze Malbus is over it. Like he doesn't even want to have anything to do with it anymore.
Mhm.
He's kind of moved past that. He's kind of the same deal. However, true it is, he's still doing his I'm one with the Force is with me. He's still living the life that way. Baze was like, no, done.
Until the end.
Until the
It's
end.
like he came back to it. It's almost like he came back to believing in the Force because he starts saying, "I'm one with the Force is in me." Like he
that his best friend just sacrificed his life, and
Mhm.
kind of brought him back around.
Yeah, it was deep.
Balance.
I thought that was a deep moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are a lot of really, it's when Bodhi decides to risk his life with this crew. He just left the Empire because he's like, I was in a horrible place. I'm here now. All right, well, I guess I'll run on this mission and probably die. But I think I'm doing good, So, you got a character like that who's like, I've been a part of this evil organization. Now I have to step it up, and if I have to sacrifice myself, which he did, then so be it. But this is what he felt had to be done.
Yeah. And what I also like about that is it kind of shows a little bit more with the deleted scene that we talked about with Luke that we never got to see, with Biggs. For all we know, Bodhi was drafted into the Empire. Like he might not have even signed up for it. He could have been drafted in and never wanted to be there in the first place. And that's where he kind of found his out, or he joined because that's what everybody else is doing. Maybe that's what I should do, you know? So you get that feeling that I would like to have known what he was doing before he defected. Like, was he full blown, I'm all Empire that I met Galen Urso, or was he always on the fence? There's so much I'd want to know about these guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just as Doug said, though, it's like, yeah, he, makes that decision to, I'm doing this now, changing.
Mm-hmm. And there's something incredible too about this film. This film did two incredible things with KTSO. First of all, you made a droid as memorable as R2D2. How did they do that? And two, you gave a droid a death that brought people to tears, man. Like, it's not even a person. How did they do that? That was brilliant.
Number one, Alan Tudyk.
That's number one. Yep.
And every line
the dude
was great.
is just there. There's nothing that he's not a part of that's not funny and good. I mean, he was one of the best characters on Firefly. This new show he's on, Resident Alien, very dark but very, very funny. And he's not even in the movie. It's just his voice. You don't see him reacting or anything, but his voice acting is so perfect. And to the point, and he's so funny to the point where you can actually see the actor Diego Luna, who plays Andor, laugh in the movie. Because Alan Tudyk just improvised something. They're like, that was amazing, so good that we're going to keep this laugh in the movie because it was perfect.
Yeah, and if you're wondering what it is, it's when he was busted, said, take these guys to prison. He goes, I'm taking these prisoners to prison them in prison. And Andor says something, and K2 whacks him in the face. And he says, they'll be like, there's more where that came from. You can see Andor covering his face like this and turning his head behind K2 because he was starting to laugh at it. And you're right, it was a brilliant ad lib.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, and he was just written well, too.
He gave it such a great personality.
Mm-hmm.
Sarcasm. It was great.
Yeah. Because, they wrote that one perfectly. The robot in Solo was fine, but it was a little over the top.
I can't even remember him, to be honest. So
it was a her.
That tells me.
Yeah,
her.
And she's a part of the Millennium Falcon now, apparently.
Yeah.
This was a character who was a standalone character, and for a robot that is hard to do. And because we just did Rebel Moon, and there was a robot in there, and that robot did a couple cool things, but I don't really think about the robot that much when I think of those two movies. Where Rogue One, I mean, there you can see, that's the picture I chose because that was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
So
I liked the droid's look in Rebel Moon, but now that you mention it, compared to K2SO, it's like, oh yeah, K2SO is a masterful character, and that other droid does pale in comparison. And it was Anthony Hopkins too. You would have thought, I liked him and I liked that movie, but you would have thought they could have done a little more with him as an actor with that droid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to see K2 fight. You got to see him be sarcastic.
Oh yeah, he's not even looking.
He just throws a grenade. Yeah. That character is probably my favorite character in one of them, but you immediately love that character by the time of that movie's over. And again, you want to see more of that. His lines are so funny. You know what the probability is that she'll use that weapon against you?
It's
high. It's very high.
Kind of to summarize how I felt about this film, we covered this film last year on a, not live, but on a recorded podcast. And I remember getting ready for that movie. I thought, oh, I've seen this. I know the story. I remember I loved it in the theater. But with it being such a simple plot, I didn't know if it would have the rewatchability. And I went back and I watched it again, and it won me over within 20 or 30 minutes. And I got emotionally wrapped up in the characters again, knowing what was coming, knowing what happens to every character, knowing Chirrut's about to die, and I'm like sitting there like trying to hold back tears, and my wife's like, "What? Are you okay?" And like you know it's coming, and it's still emotionally powerful. There's I mean, do you expect to go to a Star Wars movie and start thinking about your legacy and like what your life means and what you're doing with your life? And is it the most meaningful thing you can be doing with it? And the spiritual journey that the characters took. And I mean,
Well,
there's a
like you
lot
said,
here.
Yeah.
yeah, this is not a typical Star Wars movie. This is a war movie. You know, when you watch movies like We Were Soldiers or Saving Private Ryan or watch Band of Brothers, at the end of it, you're like, God, I played video games way too much, or I need to work out, or it's like, do I do enough for my community? I mean, these guys went over and died for our community, and yet I can't go do this. It makes you think of things like that, where Star Wars, the original trilogy was so amazing, fantastic, and fantasy, and laser swords and laser guns, and it was cool. This was, we're in a war. This is going to happen. This needs to happen. Otherwise, we all die. Well, I guess I'm going to go do this and probably die, and that's what soldiers did. And so when you sit there through a 2-hour movie and you watch these characters grow in that little time to a point where they're willing to give up their life for millions of others, yeah, it's going to hit you where you feel it. And movies like this, and like I said, other war movies and stuff, it was written well, it was shot well. There was still plenty of humor, which was nice.
Oh yeah.
And
you don't usually get that in a Star Wars film.
Yeah. So, but I was kind of looking through some of the writers, and it makes sense. One of the writers, his name is, where is that? Chris Weitz. He wrote the movie Ants. Now, have you guys seen that movie?
Oh, a long time ago.
Yeah,
so.
it's a cartoon about ants. Yeah. And right towards the beginning of the movie, the ants go to war with the grasshoppers, and literally everyone dies. I mean, the main character is sitting there talking to Danny Glover's disembodied head right before he dies.
Oh, I remember that
in this kids movie.
Okay.
And I remember watching this like, holy cow.
Oh, I remember.
So it's a darker take, and that's how his career started, was that. And then
really?
About a Boy, The Golden Compass, Cinderella, the live action. He did the live action Pinocchio that came out not too long ago, or last.
He did About a Boy.
Yeah, he wrote it.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. That's a great one. He wrote Ants. Ants sounds a lot like Bug's Life.
It came out the exact same time.
Are you
serious?
like
a darker
Bug's Life was more
the same movie.
Yeah, it was.
It's a funny
much
story.
funnier.
I've seen a Bug's Life. When you were describing, I haven't seen Ants, and then you started talking about ants. I'm like,
Stallone's in Ants.
They fight the grasshoppers.
Yeah.
This is
Sixth
like a Bug's
grade.
Life.
I'm at school, not to go too far off the rails here,
Oh,
but
good.
my teacher comes in and she's like complaining about this movie. Oh, it's so terrible. You shouldn't see it. It has this many swear words in it. And she starts talking about the ants dying. And I'm sitting there like, I got to see this movie.
Yeah. But yeah, you don't expect that. I mean, obviously his teacher came in and was like, holy cow, let me tell you about this. It was a kids movie that got pretty dark. I mean, you think about when we watched Dark Crystal when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
It has that. Dark Crystal was scarier, but it still has that darker, because Star Wars is a kids movie. That's they made billions in toys, and then you show up and it's like, oh wow, oh god, people are dying, and this is that's dark. You know, and they start off sprinting with Andor killing that spy. You know, they're holding nothing back with this, you know. So again, this isn't a typical Star Wars movie. It's a war movie. I mean, it's basically the Dirty Dozen in space.
Yeah, the emotional high of Star Wars to me is this, maybe Vader revealing that he is Luke's father, and Vader and Luke's final battle. I mean, those to me are the three emotional peaks of the entire Star Wars franchise. And this film is what I wanted out of the sequel trilogy
We
and
all
didn't
did.
get.
We all did. And that's the thing. They came out with 7 first. 7 was fun. Episode 7, I enjoyed it. I was so excited about what's coming next. Then Rogue One comes out, and I'm like, oh my god, you just even went further. You just took that to a whole nother level. And now you're like so pumped up for the next movie to come out because you're like, oh, look at this stuff. And then 8 came and kicks you right in the nuts. And you're like, what? And then immediately after they released Solo. And I think that's why Solo was fine, in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. It was
fine.
fine.
It wasn't great, but
this was great. Rogue One
was fantastic. You weren't going to top this. And you don't need to, but I thought it could at least be along those lines. And then they just like, now we messed up with 8. We put out Solo way too soon. We put it out like 4 months after 8, and so people still have a bad taste in their mouth. And then they put out 9, which is like, yeah, we're just kind of cobbling this together now because like, 8 was so bad. Somehow
grab that girl over there.
Back.
She's black. We'll make her Lando's daughter, and let's do this. And you know, they introduced like they brought in a Hobbit. What was his character supposed to be there for? He had like 4 lines.
Right, it's just a favor to
Dominic
the director.
Monaghan. Yeah, it's like
yeah. So with
throwing things in there.
Yeah, I know.
Now we keep complaining about this.
I know.
We'll
my
do
point
the sequels
is
next year.
My point, I don't even want to, but my point is, you're right. It was such a high, like a pinnacle of Star Wars was Rogue One comes out, and it blew everybody away on how good it was. And you just think like, if this is what it's going to be like, having these new Star Wars movies with like Episode 7. Like I said, fun, not overly original, but it gets you in the mood and it felt good. You're like, I can deal with that. It's setting stuff up. We thought. And then Rogue One shows up and it's just, I mean, honestly, that was like my favorite movie I've ever seen in a theater. It was so, I mean,
wow.
And then the whole Vader. And when, I mean, honestly, I've never been to a movie theater where I walked out like absolutely so pumped up and excited, and especially when you're sitting there and all of a sudden out of nowhere that red lightsaber, you're just going, oh.
it pushed you through the glass ceiling because I mean you were pressed up against the ceiling. It's like, this is so good. Oh no, he died. Oh, this action, and all of a sudden, and then when you know the music goes down, it's dark and everyone turns their heads, and then that thing hits and you're like, what's gonna happen? And then he just charges them. People are flying body parts everywhere. It's like, oh my god! And the glass ceiling just explodes.
Yeah, the whole theater I was in was screaming, like, oh my, look at this.
It was louder than when Yoda started fighting in Episode 2,
and that was loud.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends, and it's just like you just walked out with like, I was speechless. I was just like, I cannot believe what I just witnessed. And it's so weird to go from that high to the next movie,
which is
that low.
Pretty much
complete opposite.
It is, because we talk Empire at the top and everything, but I mean Rogue One is right there.
Oh yeah.
The original trilogy and Rogue One, when we rank them, it's not like Empire, Episode 4, no, it's boom, 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 boom. And then, the next, Episode
5.
3 is down here. I mean, Episode 8, that it's got to be the worst of the worst out of all everything, right?
It's down for me. It's my least favorite one, and it's right above Attack of the Clones. Or Attack of the Clones is above it, only because 3PO is so annoying.
Well, guess
But-
how much money, before we sign off, guess how much money this movie made, Rogue One,
How much money did it make? A lot.
worldwide.
$500 million.
Higher.
$1 billion.
It's $1 billion
Oh.
movie.
I thought you meant just sorry, domestic.
1.05 billion. It's 533 million domestic in the US and 525 million international. That is incredible for a film with no recognizable characters, main characters.
Yeah,
Well,
really, other
yes
than-
and no, because I mean it is Star Wars.
And the
But,
Death Star is a character and
Yeah.
things like, I guess
Yeah.
Darth Vader, you know.
but here's
Well,
the thing.
I didn't know Tarkin was going to be in this. I was
No, and he
surprised.
was incredible too. Yeah.
And I'm gonna give it up for the main bad guy, Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn.
I liked him too.
I like this actor. Okay,
Mhm.
you know he's played a Skrull in the Marvel movies. He was in Ready Player One, which I kind of like and dislike. We'll get into that someday. But yeah, I like this character. He's played some good people, but he plays a good bad guy. He plays not the typical like Darth Vader bad guy. He's just mean. Just
Yeah, me.
I can't
Good
say
one.
what I want to say. He's just a doofus, but I don't know.
He's one of those D words.
Where's
Yeah.
all my bleeps? I gotta
Right there you go.
gotta upload
But,
some sound
you know,
bites
he's-
for R2D2.
Right, that would have been great. But yeah, you know, he's not a big bad mean guy. He's just a bad guy,
Mhm.
and he portrays that very well. You know, so I really enjoyed seeing him in this too, because you could see he was such a bad guy, but he was such a wuss at the same time. Because whenever he had to talk to Vader, he's just like, oh god, you know, all scared and everything. Which I understand, it's Vader. He just kills people randomly, but you know, you see the weak and the evil side of him. But at the same point, does he have any strength? You know, it's so
Mhm.
he did really well. Forrest Whitaker, again, small part, but if you watch the Clone Wars, and then, like you said, he was in Andor, you know, his character's portrayed a lot more, so you get to know this character. So that was more of a cameo for the true Star Wars fans. When he showed up, I didn't know who Saul Guerrero was, but apparently everyone else in the theater did.
I knew he was.
Yeah. So
Yeah, he's just he does guerrilla warfare, and kind of a what's the word? There's a
mercenary.
word. Yeah, like that. He just
Yeah.
kind of does his own thing.
He's
So much that
kinda mixed morality.
the rebels don't
too.
even want to mess with him because he's so extreme.
Yeah, good or bad, right?
Yeah.
Like regardless of what side you are on, he
He's
he
Stone
wants to
Cold
take
Steve
down-
Austin.
Pretty much, he wants to take down the Empire, but if that means that I have to blow up some rebel stuff to do it, I'll do it. I'll do it. I don't care.
That's how I talk too.
It's exactly how he spoke. Okay, I'll do it.
Now you're turning into South Park, like Canadian dudes.
Okay,
I'll do it, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
Okay, I do what I want.
oh,
Anyway,
guys, if you're watching and you can't get enough of space stuff, we are covering in 2 weeks Fire in the Sky live. So hop online, be a part of that. It'll be Monday night at 8:30 Central. That would be June 3rd. So join us then. It'll be a party. And
Actually, in 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Oh, so it's not May 3rd. What's the date?
No, we'll have a new Star Wars video out next week,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and then after that, we're gonna have a short video based on, what did we say? Based on a true hoax.
Yes.
Of, Fire in the Sky.
is based
And then
on
we'll have a live
true
discussion.
supposed alien abduction story.
Yeah.
So we will
we'll
in
have
2 weeks be releasing a video. I was wrong. May 3rd is when we release the video for that. In
and then
3
we'll
weeks,
have,
May or June 10th. Gosh, June 10th.
already.
We go live to talk about it. So hop on with us then.
oh, we got
And
3
if
weeks
you
off.
can't
Nice.
get enough Star Wars, we did live stream what the original trilogy meant to us, why we love it. And you guys were there in the theater for the originals, and I was there
One
for
of 'em.
the re-releases. So we got to talk about our
Yeah.
our
Drew's a little
first
bit younger than me.
experience.
I got to see
So
Jedi
yeah.
for the first time, and I don't remember anything but being freaked out.
So yeah, watch this next if you can't get enough of that. We'll see.
Are we
you
done with
soon.
Rogue One?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
We've been
Well,
talking
is there
too much.
something else you wanted to say?
I don't know. I just it was I didn't realize how long we've been on here. It
Yeah,
just
we've
seemed
been
like
on
it
for
kind
a
of
while.
went by really fast. I was like, is that what? I
Oh,
guess
and you get
it
a
is.
good conversation. It just moves.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. There's so much. So
Yeah,
much
I could
here.
sit and talk about this for another hour, but
Maybe we will.
Yeah.
maybe I'll just sit here after you guys are gone and still talk about it.
Yeah. Hey, we've been getting some comments lately. If there's a sci-fi movie, and that's kind of what we're focusing on right now, or just sci-fi, we might squeeze a few things in here now and again, but we want to focus on sci-fi and how movies like that work with spirituality that we deal with. So if you have a movie that you like that, maybe we haven't thought of, maybe we've never seen, put them in the comments. We'll,
Yeah.
if somebody comments a movie that a sci-fi movie they want us to watch that is appropriate, no bad stuff. Anyway,
Well, we
put it out
we
there.
watch R-rated movies, so yeah, we
Starship
get
I
into
was
that.
just saying,
No X-rated.
there, yeah, I
There,
wouldn't say
there.
that.
That's what we mean. We watch Rebel Moon and
ET,
stuff.
the extra, never mind.
Yeah,
Um,
uncut. ET triple X.
No, ET the extra terrestrial. Yeah, okay. We'll go over it after we're off. I know what you mean.
Anyway, you know what
That
I'm
was amazing.
saying. Find a
That was
movie,
amazing.
comment, you put it in the comments, we're gonna do it. All right. So throw them in there. Give
All
us a
right.
like, subscribe, hit the bell, because that does something too. So I heard.
We'll see you guys soon.
Take it easy.